Hi, everyone. Welcome to another LinkedIn Live. And I'm so glad to be here today because we're going to talk about all things bankruptcy. I don't know about you, but when I heard the term bankruptcy, I literally get like a feeling, like a ick feeling, like I don't know what it means. I don't know the impact. I've only heard negative things about it. So when I met Veronica Glatt, I said, I need to know more information. And Veronica, you're with the Lynn Law Group, and she is an expert in bankruptcy law. So we thought not only can we educate me while we're going through these conversations, but educate maybe you if you have a question around bankruptcy, either personally or for your business. So welcome, Veronica.
Thank you. And, I think conversations about bankruptcy are really important ones to have, especially now as more and more people are struggling. And I get, why bankruptcy has the reputation. When we all were playing Monopoly as kids, when you hit bankruptcy, it was like your life was over. So we've kind of been hit over the head with that idea about bankruptcy being the worst thing ever, when the reality that we've seen is it's a fresh start, and really it's a wonderful fresh start.
So you just mentioned, you said like your life is over. When do people show up at a bankruptcy attorney? Like, is it almost too late, too early? I'm probably gonna think too late, but they feel like their life's over. Give me some insight. Like, if I was a new client or like an average client walking in, what does that look like for you?
So I always encourage people to come in earlier versus later. But unfortunately, the reality is it's never too late. First of all, bankruptcy is such an incredible tool that it can help at pretty much any phase in the game. But people normally call us when something official happens. So either they're served with a lawsuit, served with a foreclosure, their check is getting garnished, something big happens in order to get people to reach out to us. We prefer for people to reach out early because then we can strategically plan around things. Protect more of what they own versus having to scramble because you're on the clock because maybe you got served with a lawsuit or something like that. So unfortunately, it's usually when something official happens.
Yeah, I use the analogy of like when you have a toothache, right? And like the longer you wait, the more it costs, the more painful it is, the longer you've had to live with it. It sounds like the same thing here is if you're thinking there's something that needs to be done, start talking about it.
Absolutely. And that's what I tell people. If you are losing any sleep over debt, if it is weighing on you in any way, there is a pathology there that you should reach out about. And maybe, I mean, what's the worst thing that can happen, right? It doesn't mean that if you reach out, you're going to file bankruptcy. It just means you're going to get informed before you start doing things like draining your 401k, which is protected in bankruptcy, or getting a HELOC on your house, which again, the equity in your home in Florida is tremendously protected. So we just want to avoid people draining protected assets to pay on bad debt when there could be other ways to get out from underneath it.
Yeah, I just learned a few things. So very, very, very good to know just from this conversation. You also said sleepless nights. What emotions do you see when people show up talking about this topic? Like I said, I get the shoulders up and the heebie-jeebies, just the word. What does a typical client look like for you when they show up?
So I like to say it's kind of like an onion. There's so many kind of layers to peel back on it. We get the people that are very like matter of factly and tell us, what the debt is, what their assets are. And I try to keep it general unless people want to tell me their story, which I do love to hear because I think there is so much there with the background of what happened, and there could be a gambling problem, an addiction issue. And I think having people understand that it's a judgment free zone. I'm not going to judge you based on why you got here. There's so many reasons why people get there, right? We call it like the 3 Ds: death, disease, and divorce, for instance. And there's just, so they call us counselors at law. And that's also because it's kind of part of what we do, is kind of take the shame away from discussions surrounding debt. Because I mean, let's face it, if we all live in America, we've all got some kind of debt in some way, shape, or fashion, whether that's good debt, they call it, whatever that means, mortgage, car loan, credit cards. And so it shouldn't be like this elephant in the room that we're just afraid to talk about.
Okay, so that just what my brain went, whoop, we need to have another conversation here because if I'm filing for bankruptcy or if I want to have a conversation with bankruptcy, Can I, do I, should I bring my romantic partner, my business partner? At what point do I need to get other people involved in this conversation?
So that also, depending on if that's going to be the barrier to getting information, like I have a lot of people that call in without their spouse even knowing because they might
Correct.
think that their spouse might have an automatic objection. And that's happened before. Oh, my husband would never agree to this. So if you think that by getting information and being able to kind of already prepackage and present it to your spouse, that'll be more palatable and work better, people can reach out to us without their spouse. And I don't want that to be a barrier. And people can file alone, they can file with their spouse, and that goes to the strategy as well, because there's things you can protect if you file jointly. There's things you can protect if you file separately, if you have more assets. So it's all part of the strategy. And certainly you don't have to wait for your spouse to be on board to just get the information.
Right. I think that's the important thing. Not necessarily make a decision because
Yes.
in a marriage and a business, like there should be open communication, but
Mhm.
be informed, I think is the big thing here. So talking about being informed, what's the difference between personal bankruptcy and business bankruptcy? Like when would I know or how would I know which one is best?
Sure. So it's just going to depend what your goals are with the business. So, business wise, there's two types of bankruptcy there's liquidation bankruptcy, which is like a chapter 7, or there's a restructuring. And for businesses, that's going to be a chapter 11 or a sub chapter 5. I know it's a lot of
I was gonna say that
numbers
makes
and
nothing.
chapters.
Those are numbers to me, right? They make
I
no
know.
sense. Yeah.
But basically, that goes in, as part of the consultation. So, if your business is profitable and it's making money and it's just a matter of restructuring a few debts, then you might want to restructure the business. Otherwise, and we have a lot of clients that do this, and it's hard because, a lot of times your business is your baby, so to speak. And, we have clients that they wind down the business, they shut it down, especially if it doesn't have a lot of assets. And then they just restart the same kind of business down the road because now they've learned from the prior mistakes and they can build it back so much better and stronger and lighter than before. And like we had clients in the recession that filed and now they're doing amazing, and they shut down the old business, reopened another one down the line, and they're doing great. And same kind of business,
And
same.
maybe sorry, I'm going to jump right in
Yeah.
because I've always heard that there's, 7 years, where it's like impossible, not impossible, but challenging. Is the same with business that there's a startup time frame to rebuild your business or can you do it right away without your credit being damaged?
I mean, not really. It's also going to depend on whether you're trying to get new credit, which, I don't necessarily advise doing that right away if you can avoid it, obviously. But, then we have the personal aspect of the business too. So, did you personally guarantee these debts for the business? So, we have a lot of people with SBA loans, EIDL loans that they personally guaranteed. They've been paying on, so there's no fraud involved. Obviously, they paid on them for years and they just can't do it anymore. So, that can also be tremendous to kind of wipe your personal slate clean from that. And, we help people do that all the time. We'll file the personal chapter 7 bankruptcy to wipe the debt, and then we'll file the business's chapter 7 to close down the business so that the client can in the future, open another business. Obviously not in the same name and, there it has to be a little bit different, but that happens all the time. We have clients that just start over.
If I'm struggling to pay my bills, how the heck am I going to afford an attorney and a good one like you, right? Like,
So
this is the thing when I meet bankruptcy attorneys, I'm always fascinated. I'm always like, how do you get paid? Like, I know when I work with clients, it's a fearful factor because we're talking about money. And so, like anybody who's been in business for themselves, people paying you on time and, you know, is sometimes a crapshoot. And now you're talking to people who don't have money or aren't good with money for the most part that are in debt. How the heck do you get paid and run a successful practice? How does that work?
Bankruptcy cases are not super high value cases. So I'm going to start off with that. Like we do flat fees and it's pretty low considering what legal fees normally are. So bankruptcy, chapter 7 is going to be anywhere between 2,500 and 3,000, including filing fees, generally in the state of Florida. And of course, it varies depending on complexity and things like that. But that's relatively low for legal fees if you kind of compare other, kind of areas of the law. So what people generally do when they have their consultation with us, if there aren't any red flags or issues, like they've taken cash advances and used their credit cards recently, then generally what we say is you can stop paying on your unsecured debt, like the credit cards, but you also have to stop using it too. So you put that money towards your bankruptcy, you save up. People have friends or family that can spot them. And because the truth is, it is a chunk of money, but it offers you immediate relief because once the minute the bankruptcy is filed, everything has to stop generally lawsuits, garnishments, collection efforts of any kind. There are, outliers like child support, you still have to pay that. But so it offers you tremendous relief and immediate relief. So if somebody has a foreclosure sale the next day, we have filed chapter 13 to save homes the day before a sale, for instance. So
That sounds really stressful.
it was very stressful. It can be very stressful, let me tell you. But, it offers immediate relief, and it's such a wonderful feeling to help people in a tangible way, because as lawyers generally in most practice areas you can never say, well, this and this is going to happen, but in bankruptcy, because it's so surgical and mathematical, and statute based, generally at a consultation, I'm able to tell a client, yes, this will get rid of XYZ. You won't be able to get rid of XYZ, and you can keep XYZ. So it's very fulfilling to be able to tell a client up front, this is probably going to be the result.
Okay. What got you into this type of law, right? I mean, this is like you just said, it's very surgical, very precision. How did you end up here?
So it's a very funny story, actually. I took bankruptcy law in law school, and I met my husband in law school, who was a practicing bankruptcy attorney already. And at the time, it seemed so boring to me. And math, I was like, are you kidding? I went to law school to not do math. Like, why would I do this to myself? And I was a public defender for a long time. And I still, I still attended all the bankruptcy events. I went to all the training still. So I've been very much entrenched in the bankruptcy world since law school. And I would say it's the feeling of being able to help a client in a very tangible way. My time as a public defender, I had this tremendous feeling of wanting to help the client, but in so many cases, I couldn't choose my cases. I couldn't choose my facts. And it was very hard to not be able to help people in many situations that I wanted to. And many I did, but so it's the feeling of helping people. I love practicing with my husband as well. And I kind of, with some of my other bankruptcy attorney friends, we kind of call it happy law because we get to tell people, yes, we can handle this for you. We've got this. And so I think that is why.
Yeah. Which I love happy, right? Happy laws. That's a great way of putting it. The person sitting at the other side of the table, what I've noticed when I talk to people is so much shame that comes into the room with them. Is, the end result, what you're talking about might be years or months down the line. But when they first walk in, it's the shame of getting in that situation. I should have known better. I should have done the I should haves, right? Um, and I also see when they file for bankruptcy, a few years later, they're back in debt again because the habits haven't changed. And the spending comes back. And then all of a sudden, I'll just pull a credit loan, we'll sell the house. And they use the same tools that they knew before without making a change, right? So bankruptcy, I see sometimes is used as a mechanism to get like a band-aid right on the fix. But long term, how do you help people not cycle back into the patterns?
Absolutely. And so that's actually one of the reasons I was so excited to talk to you because I'm kind of missing that tool in my arsenal, right?
Right.
People often in the consultations will ask me, how soon can I get another credit card? And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, we're just getting rid of these. You haven't even gotten rid of them yet. Like, do you really want to jump back into that? But, of course, as the attorney, I can only say so much because my job is really to do the bankruptcy and I don't want to overstep that unless I'm asked, um, but I kind of want to throw that back to you actually. What do you think is the best way for somebody who's gotten discharged in their bankruptcy to make sure they don't fall into the same trap? Because we have a lot of repeat clients over the years too.
Right. And that's what I'm afraid of, right? Is we do what we know.
Hmm.
And our relationship with money, the tools that we use, we do on default, right? From what our friends use, from what our parents taught us, however we're looking at it, or just what we learn from the streets, right? And sometimes we're in a situation where we have to get the key lock, or we think that's the only option out. And so for me, with I'll say repeat offenders, and it's interesting. I've had a couple clients with like 20 years marriage coming to me recently, and they've realized that the patterns that they're doing, they're ready to change because as they're heading into retirement, they don't have as much hustle and leverage to pull anymore. And so for me, it's working on the mindset and a little bit of literacy, financial literacy, and a lot of financial conversations of where are you spending, why are you spending it. You talk about the credit card, right? Somebody wants their credit card right away. Why do we need the credit card? Is it because we're living above our means? Okay, if it is, where do we need to shift? How do we stay within our means, not only within our means, but also start saving for the rainy day fund, the sunshine fund, the vacation fund, the Christmas fund, whatever else is coming down the path, because something else is coming down the path. And so those are more of the questions that we need to start getting into is how can you set yourself up for success after the bankruptcy? Because like you said, it's a great tool if used properly, but oftentimes it gets abused in some ways, and that's I think some of the negative connotations that come with it.
Yeah, and I totally get that view as well. And I do wish that our clients could get better strategies, but again, how are you going to get better strategies if you have nobody there to teach them to you, right? Obviously being a bankruptcy lawyer, I've become much more careful with money and credit cards myself because I see the dangers of it. I see the worst situations with them. But for my clients, how are they going to learn new strategies? I don't know. That's definitely something that, is in your wheelhouse. So
Well, then I'll give a plug here for my book, right? Conversations with Your Financial Therapist. We'll put it up right here. It's a five-step using the word money mindset framework to help people have conversations around money because you're not going to solve everything in one go. It's having the tool to repeat conversations, to brainstorm with people, to have trusted advisors that you could talk to, some that are paid, some that are your network. I call them my board of directors. I have different people that I talk to for different things. A car issue is a different person than I talk to than, my dishwasher not working, right? But I have friends that I can call for different people to ask. And so that's my takeaway here is if you are dealing with some financial stress or struggles, is start talking to people. The shame that comes with it is self-inflicted at this point. We've all made money
100%.
mistakes, every single person. And
Yeah.
as soon as you release the shame, you're able to find solutions.
100%. That is such a big part of what I do is the shame. And I make some online content about debt and bankruptcy. And that is one of the videos that I make over and over again. And I've said every time I have a conversation in a consultation that involves shame, I'm going to make a new video about it because it's so important. Shame, and it's self-inflicted, just like you said, is the true barrier to getting help because nobody is looking at individually what I'm doing or what you're doing. It's all in our head that we think that everybody is so focused on us when in reality everybody's got their own issues and their own problems they're dealing with, and nobody's looking at my credit card debt or your credit card debt or your car loan or your car being underwater. So when we start having the conversations with friends, coworkers, we realize we're really not alone.
Yes.
And rather than sitting in shame and beating ourselves up, and, I'm a firm believer that stress like that, it builds up inside our bodies and causes disease, causes so many issues, and it's just not worth it for money.
I agree. So if people want to find these videos, what's the best way of getting in touch with you, Veronica?
So we are on all social media and YouTube. at Lynn Law Group. So it's our firm name. And we just do informational videos about bankruptcy, about how bankruptcy can help in specific situations. So that's where all the videos are and on our website.
Great. Well, I enjoyed the chat. I know I learned something. Thank you for joining our LinkedIn Live, and we'll be in touch soon. Take care.
Sounds good. Bye, Erica.
Bye.